Okay, everybody, again, thank you so much for attending NationBuilder's Quick Wins to optimize your Giving Tuesday strategy. Really excited with Giving Tuesday just around the corner to really dig into a lot of strategies that you guys could be employing to make sure that you are raising as much money and targeting your donors as much as possible going into the end of year giving season. So there we go. So let's go ahead and start out with some introductions. I am your host. My name is Marco Suárez. I'm a senior enterprise account manager here at NationBuilder. And in my role, I work with some of NationBuilder's largest customers in the political, the nonprofit, the advocacy sectors, and serve partly as their technical project manager and largely as their strategic partner to help them with all the digital engagement work that they do using our platform. This includes things like helping them get holistic insights on their supporters in an organic way, and how do you then use that information and leverage those relationships to boost their fundraising efforts. And that's what we'll be talking about a lot today as well. And before I came to NationBuilder, I've been here for about 2 years now. I actually came from the world of political fundraising and campaign finance. I worked for a couple of years at a political law firm doing political fundraising and financial reporting for campaigns up and down the state of California, from races for city council to US Senate. So that being said, we do have another person on my side joining us today. Nelly, if you want to go ahead and jump in and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi, all. I'm Nelly. I work on the marketing team here at NationBuilder, helping out with lots of different things, social media, emails, webinars like these ones, and contributing to our content. So I'll be here monitoring the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in there, and we will circle back to them.
Awesome, thanks, Nelly. And speaking of the chat, that leads us nicely into our next slide. So before we actually get started, I want to go ahead and run through a few housekeeping items, just 3. The first one, make sure you're muted. It looks like you all are already muted by default when you enter the meeting. It just helps us to make sure that we cut down on background noise to make sure everybody else can hear. But that being said, that doesn't mean that you guys have to stay quiet the entire time. So feel free to engage in the chat. So if you are new to Zoom or haven't used the chat functionality before, when you're hovering over your Zoom window where you see this presentation, you should see the option with like a little chat bubble icon. If you want to open that up, you can go ahead and drop questions, make comments, anything like that in the chat. And if you guys want to get some practice with that, go ahead and open it up. You can drop your name and let us know where you're from, what organization you're with, anything interesting. And then finally, if you have any questions, share them in there as we go, and we'll circle back to them at the end during Q&A session, which we'll save time for at the end. Cool. Okay, and if any of you guys have any issues with the chat or anything like that, feel free to just chime in, and we'd be happy to help out. Okay. So before we get started, for those of you who may not be aware of what NationBuilder is, want to give a quick recap of who we are and what we do as a company. So NationBuilder at its core is community engagement software. And what that means is we integrate all the aspects of digital organizing and targeting that you need to do all of the work that you need to do online and offline to a certain degree. What we entail in our, or what we include in our integrated solutions are people database, so you understand who your supporters are, and to do segmenting, targeting, things like that. We help you build out websites that are optimized for action. We help you with your communications, specifically how to send out targeted communications through email blasts, text blasts, and the like. We have a finances section as well for you to do your fundraising, which we'll be digging into in a little bit. And we also do a lot of goal tracking, automatic goal tracking, to make sure that you are hitting the metrics that you're held accountable for. And so what that looks like in practice is something like this. If you've never been a NationBuilder before, this is a standard profile for a given individual, at least a snippet of that profile. So on Ruth Jordan's fictitious profile here, we see a number of things. Right next to her name, we see badges that show that she's donated $1,500. We know she's a volunteer. It looks like she's recruited 2 people to your organization. It looks like we have background information on her, that she's an activist and a dog lover. We have her profile photo from Twitter. And we have a number of tags on her profile. And those tags are those little yellow sticky note looking things. So we know that she's attended an event where she's called people. We know that she's been included in our September outreach. So we have all of this data of how she's engaged with us, largely online, but also offline to a certain extent, right? We know that she's donated. We know she's attended events. And having all of this information in one place will allow you to to understand your people in a really holistic way. Cool. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump into what Giving Tuesday is, why it's important, and why we think as an organization in the social impact sector, you should be considering and employing a Giving Tuesday strategy. So just for some background, Giving Tuesday is effectively a digital organizing holiday, and it always comes the Tuesday after U.S. Thanksgiving. So you know how for all of you U.S.-based people, we have Thanksgiving followed immediately by Black Friday, and then after that, Cyber Monday. You can think of Giving Tuesday as the sort of the event that comes right after Cyber Monday. And the reason that it comes at that time of the year is not only to kick off the formal like end of year giving / charitable season, but it's also to mobilize a critical mass of people online who maybe have bought things for themselves after Thanksgiving, maybe bought things for their loved ones, material things typically, to then use a lot of that time, that energy, that money to then funnel that towards more charitable, more social good reasons. And just so you guys know, this year's Giving Tuesday is going to be on December 3rd, 2019. So some opportunities for Giving Tuesday. The reason that we have a webinar about it, the reason that we recommend it is that because it's such an established holiday at this point, that it gets major national attention and social media trends. There's a ton of resources from the formal Giving Tuesday organizers. If you go to givingtuesday.org, you'll be able to pull things like toolkits, examples of organizations that participate, social share images, even if you want to go ahead and use some of their images. And Giving Tuesday is just a really good way to engage new donors and to motivate existing donors to give more, essentially building those relationships. Great. So now that we have our overview of what Giving Tuesday is, why it's important, let's talk about some quick wins that you can employ to execute your plan, some strategies that you can carry out. All right, so the number one thing that you should always employ for all of your outreach, but especially for Giving Tuesday, is you want to make sure that outreach is as personalized as it can be, given what you know about your supporters. So the first thing is we want to make sure that you're analyzing your existing supporter base and separating those who can become fundraisers versus small dollar donors. And what that means, even though the ultimate goal for all of your supporters is the same, to get them to donate a certain amount, we want to make sure that you're the way that you're asking them, what you're asking them, acknowledges what previous actions they've taken, other information you know about them, like have they donated a lot of money before, have they donated a little bit of money before. Meeting people at sort of dovetails with that. So what I mean by that, just to use that example for people who've like donated before, people who've donated like $50,000, for example, may require like one-to-one touches, whether they're phone calls, face-to-face meetings, things like that. Whereas people who've never donated before or only donated a small bit of money before might be well served by email blasts. Another example there is people who donated online might be more responsive to things like email blasts and social media outreach versus people who've given you like check contributions, like mailed in or handed in physical checks, may be more responsive for more offline touches like mailers, phone calls, events, things like that. So it's important to keep track of not only how much money you're making and who it's coming from, but also the form, the form of the transaction that money's coming in. So create both digital and offline touch points. Moving to that third point right there, it's really important to make sure that all of your digital assets are easy to navigate and action oriented. That includes your websites. For your social media outreach, they should be clear. Your calls to action should be urgent. And your email blasts as well should be going out in a consistent cadence. And then for offline touch points, again, some of those things could be mailers, they could be phone calls, they could be presencing at events that you're attending or that you're hosting. And then finally, at the very bottom here, we have tailoring your appeals to your audience. So adjusting your calls to action based on things like issues people care about, previous actions they've taken, previous donations they've made, et cetera. So for example, if you're, let's say you're an environmental nonprofit and you know someone in your supporter base really cares about protecting natural space, like that's content that they've engaged with before, but they might not have expressed as much interest in solar energy, it's very likely the case that they'd be more responsive to Giving Tuesday messaging that orients around protecting natural space than solar energy. Cool. So all of the things we just talked about to personalize your outreach is dependent upon having supporter data that is rich, and leveraging that supporter data. So what we're looking at right here is a couple screenshots of snippets of people's profiles in NationBuilder. And you can see that every different person, from Tanya to Richard to Ruth, they all have different interests. They all have things in common. Like, it looks like they're all volunteers, and they've all emailed, but it looks like they're at different stages of engaging with your organization. For example, Tanya is a potential donor, whereas Richard Cruz, we've already asked him to pledge. We need to make sure we understand. And Ruth Jordan, it looks like she recently followed us on Twitter, whereas maybe the others haven't. So it's really important to have a good holistic understanding of where everybody's at, and in order to personalize that outreach. Okay. All right. So how should you segment your list now that you've taken stock of all of your data? There are a couple of big categories to think about. One of them is behavior. So like the action history, things that people have done, and persona. So things that more in the line of like demographics, so their age, their interests, etc. So let's start with behavior. So when it comes to behavior, things you should be looking for there are, have these people attended events before? Have they liked a certain number of Twitter posts? Have they donated before? And the reason that that's important is these people have already proved to you that they're really engaged and invested in the work that you're doing. And just looking at our own data points that we've found internally among our customer base, donors who've RSVP'd for an event within the last year gave 34% more than those who have not RSVP'd for an event. So that's going to be a big indicator for whether or not someone has a capacity to donate and donate more. And also a general best practice for Giving Tuesday especially, but just for year-round fundraising, is to make incremental asks of your existing donors. For example, if someone donated $100 earlier this year, we're going to want to ask them not only to donate again, but we're going to want to acknowledge the fact that they donated before, like, thanks for your $100 donation. Will you consider upping that to 110 or 125 or something to that effect? You can decide what that incremental margin will be. Generally speaking, I advise somewhere between 10 to 25%, but that can vary depending on your understanding of your donors, as well as are they high-level donors or lower-level donors. Moving on to persona, were things like age and interests. So the reason that this is really important to consider is that we found that people who've been around your organization, who've been on your email list, who've been supporting you in some way for 2 or more years, generally give 150% more than people who are fairly new to your supporter base. For, in this specific instance, people who've been around for a month or so. Other things to consider are geography and location. So are there specific projects, specific campaigns, specific issues in people's given areas, whether those areas are their towns or their states, that you'd be able to personalize that outreach to, or acknowledging things, again, like donation history. Okay, so next up, how should you segment your list? That is a good question that I very unsatisfyingly don't have a universal answer for you. The way you should segment your list will depend on what you're asking for and what data you currently have on your supporters. So what we're looking at right now is a snapshot of what is called a filter in NationBuilder. And in NationBuilder, you can filter on virtually every data point that you have on a given person. And in this specific example, if you've run Giving Tuesday campaigns before, like in 2017, 2018, you can actually track not only did someone give within a specific time period on a specific day, but you can also apply what are called tracking codes, which are sort of like tags, but for actual transactions, actual donations to people's donations. So we can run a filter for people who gave during the 2017 Giving Tuesday or gave during 2018 or both, so that we can resolicit those people. Because at the end of the day, the biggest indicator of whether or not someone will donate is if they've donated before, especially if they've donated for a really similar campaign. So that's a thing to consider. And then also, of course, the behavior, the persona, demographics, all of those things should be things you consider as you segment your list. All right, moving on. So let's go ahead and talk about cultivating Giving Tuesday evangelists. And what I mean by this is it's critically important to identify and activate evangelists. Sometimes they're called ambassadors among your supporter and your donor base, because to a certain degree, it's really important for you as an organization. In fact, it's your duty to do everything in your power to get your message out there. Are you running social ads? Are you sending out email blasts? Are you showing up at events? But here's why evangelists are important. So an important stat that Nielsen recently did was that they found that 84% of global consumers trust referrals from friends and family over any other form of marketing, 84%. And that is a really telling statistic in that no matter how many email blasts you send out, no matter how many social ads you buy, a word of mouth recommendation from a friend, from a sibling, from a coworker is substantially more effective. It's in fact, it's actually the most effective method of persuasion, bar none. I mean, think about it in your personal life. If someone in your network comes up and talks to you about like a new pair of shoes that they're wearing, for example, it's more likely that you're going to be willing to even consider buying those shoes than if you received a targeted ad on social. Another stat that is really interesting that proves this point is that donors, and this is a NationBuilder stat that we've determined from our own research, from our own customer base, is that donors recruited by a supporter, and what I mean by that is a donor who was brought in by someone in their network organically, gave 25% more than the average donor. Right. So not only is it more impactful for people to organically bring people from their networks into the fold, but we find that when that happens, when that organic outreach, that organic outreach by evangelists happens successfully, not only are they bringing more people into your nation or into your world, but they're also giving more, they're engaging more, they're doing more meaningful and impactful things. So yeah, things like bringing more engaged supporters and hopefully higher level donors as well. All right, so where do we get started with that? So if you are an organization that's been around for a minute or maybe less than a minute, you will likely have things like assets. You're gonna have Facebook pages, you're gonna have Twitter accounts, you're gonna have websites. So what we need to do is find the people who've engaged with you on those different online mediums. And we need to find among them who the influencers are or who the existing champions are. And those two things aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, they're often the same. And what I mean by that is not only people who've like meaningfully engaged with you, but also those who have the potential to, and the reach on social media to be effective evangelists for you. So we don't want to find just the people who are following us on Twitter, but who are the people who are following us on Twitter who have at least 1,000 Twitter followers who can really like get our message out to a really broad audience? Who are the people who are following us on Twitter who've donated money before, who've RSVP'd for events? So understanding people who are valuable for you on social, both in terms of reach, and who've also engaged with you in ways other than your Twitter account, like if they've donated, if they've RSVP'd. So wanting to make sure that we have that broader understanding of how these people are engaging. Okay, so once we identify these people, we need to turn them into social ambassadors, into evangelists, and help them make an impact right away. A couple ways that you can do that is provide tools and then the copy that they need to use ahead of time. Things like that could include like social media images that people can easily share, recruiter links. And this is a NationBuilder feature where any sign up form, any donate page, you can add just a little snippet of code that makes it a recruiter link. So if I am someone who supports that environmental organization that I mentioned earlier, and I share out a link to your donate page, anyone in my network who clicks on that link and then makes a donation will be credited as having been recruited by me. So that's you'll be able to identify who's bringing in a number of people or a certain amount of donations for you. Another external tool that we recommend often is Share Link Generator. So if you want to have a canned post, like a pre-written post that people can share out on Facebook, on Twitter, and all of that, you can use Share Link Generator to go ahead and generate those. Usually I recommend if you have a Giving Tuesday hashtag, an organizational hashtag, and a link to a page like your donate page will be important things to include there. Secondly, we're going to want to make sure that we remind them to share the day of, right? Giving Tuesday it's not a week, it's not a month, it's not a season, it's a day. It's a day to activate critical masses. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a communications plan leading up to the actual day of Giving Tuesday, December 3rd. But on the day of, we're going to want to make sure that we have massive messaging going out, not only to everybody, but especially to our evangelists to share out all the content that you need to share out. Okay, another thing is to sort of build on giving them the tools to be year-long recruiters. Another feature of NationBuilder that we strongly recommend employing are called social share prompts. And what they are is that when someone takes an action on a page, and when I say take an action, they fill out a form. So that could be a sign-up form, that could be a petition, that could be a donation form. You can immediately after they press submit, after they press donate, you can have these people get prompted to go ahead and actually like post directly on social media as well. So similar to Share Link Generator, but built into the platform directly for everybody who takes a specific action, in this case, donates. So it's an easy, low bar for you to set up for people to get that organic outreach out there. Okay, now that we've talked about what Giving Tuesday is and why it's important, what your outreach plan should generally look like, and how to identify and cultivate the evangelists in your universe, let's talk about how you can get heard above all of the noise. And what I mean by that is how do we break through the likely bombardment of messaging and donation asks that every person is getting from all of the other organizations that whose email lists they're subscribed to across the country, and in many cases across the world, with Giving Tuesday becoming a very up and coming event. Let's talk about that. So the first thing is we're going to want to make sure that your appeal stands out. And let's run through these bullet points. The first one is you're going to want to put yourself in your potential donors' shoes. What are their motivations? What are the things that will inspire these people to take time out of their day to seriously consider your ask? What is the aspect of your mission or of your work, or what specific projects can you highlight to drive urgency? And this answer will be different for every organization, for every individual. So that's the reason that I pose it in this way, a question rather than an answer. The second thing here is you're going to want to make sure that you clearly define what concrete deliverables their donation will enable. And what I mean by that is how can you make their donation, like the outcome of their donation, as tangible as possible? And that's the difference between saying something like donate so we can support our work versus what you're seeing on the screen. An example, a screenshot from a customer called Renew Oregon. Rather than just saying, hey, donate to, to make our, donate to support our work, but rather donate to fight against climate change, to help us boost renewable energy, to fight the influence of big oil. What is the tangible, specific thing that we can include there? Another common one that I see is for like international development nonprofits. So rather than just saying, hey, donate $50 to help a kid in need, it's like donate $50 and we'll be able to provide 10 backpacks and 30 pencils to kids in need in a specific country. So we just wanted to make sure those outcomes are as tangible and clear as possible. And then finally, communicate why you want them to chip in on Giving Tuesday versus any other day. So what is the importance of Giving Tuesday? Why should they be donating now in this really urgent and timely way versus waiting until like the holidays to donate? So making that case. All right. Another thing you can do to stand out is to make a really visual statement, because at the end of the day, a picture says 1,000 words. There are a lot of, a lot of psychological impacts that just simply seeing an image next to a donation page can make. So at NationBuilder, we've done a lot of research and a lot of thinking around what motivates donors. How can we like actually get individuals who land on donation pages to convert more often? And there are a couple of major things that we found and that we've built into our native donation processing feature. The first one is adding a powerful background image. So our research has shown that donation pages with powerful, full width background images with a contained focus portion of the page dedicated to the payment processing field significantly boost conversions. That's what you're seeing right here. We're seeing this this woman out there advocating. She looks like she's talking to a megaphone. Everyone looks happy. They're fighting for whatever they're fighting for. And flushed to the left side of the page, we have that stage donation page. And so that actually is the second point that I wanted to mention, is a staged donation form rather than just any old donation form with a ton of fields on it. And what a staged donation page is, by the way, is what you're seeing right here. Rather than seeing, the amount you want to donate, all of your information fields, so what's your email, what's your phone number, what's your address, and then the payment, so asking for credit card information, rather than having that show up all on one sort of like long form, it can look intimidating. It can look like a lot of work for people and oftentimes we see that people drop off the pages when you're not seeing a staged donation page. Stage donation pages, on the other hand, will ask for the same information, the amount, your personal information, and your credit card information, but will do so in a staged way. So you'll only see one piece of information to fill in at a time. This stage donation page approach was actually popularized in the Barack Obama's 2008 presidential run. And even though, again, you're asking for the same things, these simple user interface, user experience tweaks can pretty dramatically increase the conversion just because it feels a lot easier on the donor side to actually provide that information. And then also we want to make sure that we go beyond email blasts. Like, by all means, do email blasts, they're necessary. But we want to do more than just that. So we're going to want to make sure that we invest in one-on-one outreach to your most valuable potential donors and your fundraisers. So we found that after one-to-one contacts, those often result in 43% larger donations. And often after those one-to-one contacts for people who are fundraising on your behalf, so soliciting their network, soliciting people in the community to donate, that results in 53% more donations. So coming up with a plan ahead of time for the day of Giving Tuesday to get phone bankers in the office, making phone calls, to get people going out into the community, making those one-to-one contacts either at events or knocking on people's doors, whatever makes the most sense for your organization and your community. Just go beyond those email blasts. And what I say, we say valuable here, by the way, so your valuable potential donors and fundraisers, I mean valuable in a couple contexts. One of them is the literal tangible value. So people who already have donated or have the capacity to donate, like a large sum of money, for example. But also the less tangible, but equally, if not more important value, which is people who are ready, willing, and able to do grassroots outreach to their own networks about your cause and to fundraise on your behalf of Giving Tuesday. So just remember that there's two kinds of value here: people who can give actual, like, hard cash, and people who can give you time to pursue that hard cash on your behalf. Okay, cool. So that actually segues kind of cleanly into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is in-person events. Giving Tuesday is, even though it's contained to a day and it's largely an online event, there's a lot that you can do in person to drive your donations and to drive the efficacy of your Giving Tuesday strategy. So let's talk through these points right here. So we want to make sure that we're connecting with supporters IRL, or in real life. The first thing is user-hosted events are a great way to get people to turn out and contribute small dollar donations. It's one thing for you to be able to, for you as an organization to say, hey, we're having an event at this venue, come enjoy our food and donate money, right? But it's another actually higher level of engagement if there are people out there in your community who actually want to host events on your behalf. Maybe it's a house party that they're hosting at their house. Maybe they rented out a small community space or at a park to gather supporters and to gather people in their community. If that's the case, empower them. Make it easy for people to host their own events under your purview, because it'll allow them to get bought in, the organizers to buy in even more, and to, like, move up that ladder of engagement for you at your organization. But also it'll allow them, sort of like recruiter links do online, will allow them in real life to bring people to their event to donate more and make small donations. On the flip side of that, we have a concept called bundling, and this is really big in the political space, and it's starting to become big in the nonprofits, I'm realizing. And what bundling is if you have major donors, so donors who have, and this threshold for major donors differs from organization to organization, but let's just use 5,000 as a hard cutoff here. So if you have major donors who have Giving Tuesday fundraising events on your behalf, they can invite other major donors in their networks to contribute to your cause. So what that could look like is if you run a filter, right, in your database of everybody who's donated $5,000 or more in the last year, you can do one-to-one outreach to these people to ask them, we really appreciate your support, and obviously we would like your continued financial support. But if you'd like to actually host a party, fundraise on our behalf, rich people tend to hang out with other rich people that fundraise, do a lot of fundraising in their circles. Bundling those donations on Giving Tuesday would be a good strategy to really consider. And then also text keywords. This is something that NationBuilder allows you to do. They're a great way to get people to donate seamlessly from their phones at your event. So if you, or even online, you can post at your events, text donate to like 24450, whatever your short code is. And people will get a donation link sent directly to their phones, and they'll be able to open that up, make that donation. An added bonus, all NationBuilder donation pages are actually responsive by default. All right, we're rounding out our topics here. So we're gonna wanna make sure that you don't forget to show your gratitude. So once Giving Tuesday is over, we need to make sure that we're recognizing the supporters, right? We don't wanna, like, ask people for money and then disappear. we want to send personalized thank yous via email, and you can do that at scale. You can easily scale the way that you share your impact with smart fields in NationBuilder. So what you're seeing on the right-hand side in that screenshot is that even though we could be sending out an email blast to like 50,000 donors, you can make sure that that email blast includes their first name. It can include like, thank you for your donation of their specific amount. You can really tailor and personalize that outreach to make it feel like more of a one-on-one interaction, even though you're sending that out at scale. Another thing you could do is especially if you want to gamify participation in Giving Tuesday, you could create a leaderboard of top donors and recruiters. And this leaderboard can be like front facing on your website. Maybe it can be something that you just email out to people to show who are your top donors, who are your top fundraisers. And beyond that thank you email, actually, just to take this post Giving Tuesday, make sure that the next time your donors hear from you isn't for Giving Tuesday 2020 for those appeals. You're going to want to make sure that you keep these people engaged on a really consistent basis throughout the year. I mean, sure, you can send them more fundraising asks throughout the year, and in fact, I recommend it. But make sure you also send them consistent messaging that just helps them personally and emotionally buy into your organization and with your work at a deeper level. Maybe these aren't things that require action or donations, but they can be things like updates on your projects and campaigns. They can be case studies. They can be success stories. Because remember, this relationship should not be purely transactional. It should be a relationship built partly on transactional relationships, but also largely because the work that you're doing speaks to their higher level values. Okay. So now we've talked about everything you'll need for Giving Tuesday, the strategies you should employ. Well, let's talk about the digital infrastructure you're going to need in order to do all of the things we've talked about today in a really effective way. So what's non-negotiable? An action-driven website. And what I mean by that is not just a website with a static page with information about your organization. How are we making sure that people can easily sign up for your email newsletter, sign a petition about an issue you care about, make a donation, and not only have those pages available on your website, but have them easily navigable to, have them be clear, have those call to actions really clear. The next thing is we're going to want to make sure you have a supporter database, or what's called a CRM, a contact relationship management system. Just like I showed you screenshots of like Ruth's profile, Tanya's profile earlier on in today's webinar, how can you make sure that you have a repository for all of the ways people are interacting with you digitally, and have it not only just stored in a giant spreadsheet, but in a way that's actually actionable. So you can know when you need it, who's donated and who's attended our RSVP. Have that information live in one place. Then you need advanced segmentation and mapping tools. So again, you want to make sure that the data that you have is usable. So how can you build out segments? How can you run filters? And how can you identify where people live if they live within 25 miles of a specific event or within a district that you're targeting for political work? You're going to want to make sure you have mass communication tools, specifically emails for email blasting and one-on-one email interactions, and texting, both for text blasts when you're sending out a text to like 30,000 people, or for text keywords if you want to go ahead and have people text keyword in so that they can get a donate link sent directly to their phones. We're also going to want to make sure you have a modern fundraising platform with payment processing enabled. And you're going to want to make sure that you check out what those payment processing rates are, because a lot of organizations that I've worked with, especially prior to moving to NationBuilder, can really have their fees eat up a lot of the money that they're actually bringing in. So you're going to want to make sure that you pay attention to those rates as well. Finally, event registration software. You're going to want to make sure it's easy for your attendees, for your supporters to attend events, and for your super supporters, your volunteers, to host events on your behalf. All right, so additional resources that may be useful to you. On NationBuilder's website, we actually have a free fundraising course that you can take. It's online, do it at your own pace, take the modules that are most interesting to you. We'll be sure to send that out to you in the follow-up to this webinar. We have a lot of documentation on fundraising best practices. So a lot of the things that I mentioned will be documented, as well as a lot of other things. Nellie will send out to you, or I might send it out to you actually, we'll see. We also have an integration with a really cool, now free tool called Fundraising Report Card. It's free software that allows you to get advanced visual reports on key fundraising metrics. It allows you to create lists for specific donor segments, which allows you to target people more effectively. Even though it's not a NationBuilder product, it integrates, which means that any donation made on NationBuilder will automatically show up for reporting purposes in fundraising report card. We also, this may be a little less specific or a little less applicable in this case, but if there are any political campaigns out there, fundraising on ActBlue for progressives and Anadot for conservatives, we do have integrations with those platforms as well. All right. That was a lot of information that I threw at you for the last 30+ minutes. Does anybody have any questions? Or Nelly, if there are any questions that came up in the chat that I missed while I was running through everything, feel free to chime in.
It does not look like we got any questions in the chat. I know sometimes it might take a second for all the information to sit, and then you might have a question come up, and that's totally fine. Feel free to reply back to the email we send afterwards with the follow-up content.
Great, cool, Nelly, thanks a lot. So let's go ahead and get to our final slide of the day. So if you're ready to build the future, you can start for free at NationBuilder at nationbuilder.com/create, or you can reach out directly to me and we'll help you get you started. My email is on the screen, so it's going to be first initial last name, msuarez@nationbuilder.com. We also are on social media, big surprise. Feel free to follow us wherever you are present on social media. We'd love to have you in our space. Awesome. All right, everybody. If there are no other questions, I know it's a lot of information. We'll make sure that we get my contact information out to everybody along with this deck and all the other resources that you guys can watch and review on your own pace. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day, everybody. Again, my name is Marco Suárez. I'm here at NationBuilder, and I'll chat with you all soon.